It's conversational. Today, we're going to go over a new article from the Game Post talking about all of the things that Bungie have reverted since Edge of Fate. They have made a lot of changes. Many of them have been quite iterative, if that's the right way to describe it, making small changes here and there. Obviously, in the last week, we've certainly had some bigger changes, especially with regards to the portal and the power grind. There's a lot more that players would obviously love to see, but this article's interesting because it kind of goes over all the things Bungie have currently already done, and then the stuff that they plan for Renegades and beyond. So Destiny 2 has already reversed a ton of Edge of Fate changes. Here's everything that's been rolled back and what's coming in Renegades. And after 3 months, Bungie have already walked back a lot of changes that they dropped with the expansion. That launched in July, as the article points out, where Bungie overhauled nearly every core system in Destiny 2, and it was probably the biggest update in terms of overhauls that the game has ever had. I'm not sure if that really is true, but the expansion introduced a new Armor 3.0 overhaul, the new gear tier system, armor stat changes, infusion via the new currency, unstable cores, which of course is now gone. It's over. But the biggest change was the arrival of the portal. To be fair, it was pretty significant, wasn't it? A new hub that serves as the main hub for power progression across the entire game. Bungie also reworked a bunch of long-standing systems that players had gotten used to over the years, such as power and deltas, as well as introducing featured gear for select exotics in the game. That is something they have indeed said they'll kind of walk back, at least in a temporary capacity. So fast forward in 3 months, nonetheless, the backlash has forced Bungie into a series of U-turns. Most of those sweeping changes are already being undone, and with Renegades over a month away, more reversions are locked in. I'd say in the past 2 or 3 weeks, that's where we've had most of the U-turns. Before that, like we said, it was smaller changes. But to get a fuller picture, they actually highlight something from Court Projects, who's been working with Llama, who many of you guys will know about, creating a bunch of infographics. And this one is called the Great Edge of Fate Walkback. That tracks all the major additions and changes from Edge of Fate that Bungie have already reverted or plan to revert in Renegades. They show the full original image right here. Credit to Court for this, they make some really good infographics. But yeah, the Great Edge of Fate Walkback is kind of amusing. We'll actually go back to the article because it has it in a list format, but in terms of what Bungie have already done, this isn't the full list of reversions really. Obviously we've had a ton of patch notes, but power delta overhauls have been rolled back and they've shifted back to activity deltas, where they're kind of more fixed as opposed to always changing with the portal modifier system and stuff like that. They've also removed the requirement that only prime drops could advance max leveling, so that was in the upper power bands, the final 50 levels. So that of course changed. On top of that, there were sandbox changes that they reverted, like Strongholds, Chromatic Fire, and a bunch of others. And then Rage on Dungeon adjustments, so they changed the -10 delta thing. On top of that, they improved Desert Perpetual tiered loot, removed Triumph requirements for tier increases, and the exotic farm limit on legacy raids and dungeons. So to be fair, before we go on, Bungie have made a lot of changes, I imagine, or really they've focused the changes on the things that are actually manageable adjustments. I have a separate video that I planned for tomorrow where we're going to go over the effect of Bungie kind of, what's the word for it? I guess dragging their feet on certain aspects of the game. Other things, like what we're looking at here, they have indeed changed. Relatively early on, some of them at least. On top of that, conquests can now be played multiple times. Previously, you could only launch it once, of course. They have further reward updates that they plan in Renegades to actually make them more replayable, which I think is very important. The featured gear score bonus was also removed, and that used to contribute to portal scoring, whereas it's now essentially always active. Then, portal scores and rewards are now based on base power, not equipped power, and unstable core economy changes have been reversed as well, and the infusion costs have been reduced dramatically. In addition to that, and then of course there are the further plans for unstable cores down the road. Like I said, Bungie on the most part have certainly focused on making changes that are actually manageable in the time frame that they have. But yeah, I imagine as well, there's a component where not all of these were necessarily things that Bungie just thought were a great idea. There's an element of Bungie continuing to develop the product after it's actually been shipped, right? And that was one of the big challenges given Bungie having fewer resources than what they had in the past. And then going into Edge of Fate with massive system overhauls, which they certainly were. That kind of opened up a lot of problem areas, I suppose. But this is an important section really. Coming in Renegades on December 2nd, featured gear bonuses will be flattened. So instead of scaling by gear tier, all featured gear gets a flat bonus, and for weapons it's 5%. Then on armor, the damage reduction will be 10%. So that kind of, levels the playing field at least a bit. Obviously, we still need to have new gear equipped to actually get that benefit. Otherwise, all exotic gear will count as featured gear. There will be no rotations moving forward, which is a positive. This brings up another conversation because we had the changes to power. They've gone backwards on the unstable cores thing. And featured gear is kind of in an interesting place now because it's like, well, what's the point? I imagine one of the next big walkbacks will be that featured gear basically goes away, to be honest. I don't see that surviving given the amount of other changes that Bungie have made. But on top of that, unstable cores will be removed entirely as an infusion currency, and power will no longer reset every season, but there's also no power level increase in Renegades, which is pretty significant because that's a very big part of Bungie's plan to continue to engage players. They've obviously realized that with community sentiment the way it is, it's a battle just not worth continuing to engage with. So they've thrown it out the window, and I'm curious if we get another expansion next year. We are supposed to be getting 2 more expansions next year. That's what Bungie, I wouldn't use the term promised, but that's what they indicated was the plan. 2 expansions this year, 2 next year, and that was the, quote, multi-year saga that they've referred to. I don't know how it's going to go at some point in the future. I imagine they may lean back into the power leveling component, which of course now with the changes this week have been significantly sped up. But the final part of the article here, these walkbacks come at a time where D2 is facing some tough challenges. Player numbers have dropped to historic lows, worse than Curse of Osiris lows, when Bungie said it was weeks away from shutting the game down entirely. It's worth bearing in mind we are at a different point in time now with regards to the amount of resources Bungie have, but also I would assume their costs are not as high as they perhaps have been in the past. They have fewer developers, although they still have a very big studio and a need to try and please Sony. So to an extent, maybe it isn't so different because they're also working on Marathon, which will be costing money and producing no money at the moment. Insert joke about it producing no money after it releases as well. And no doubt some of you guys will do that, but Bungie are clearly trying to win folks back. That's very much true. They also reference here a massive $35 charity bundle that includes every major expansion, including Edge of Fate and Renegades, which is up on Green Man Gaming. So I'll actually link this down below because, to be fair, it's a good opportunity to grab a ton of Destiny content for a pretty low price overall. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting moving into Renegades. Separate to what we get in this particular article, there were other things that Bungie have discussed specifically wanting to work on and improve in the next expansion. So from my super not professional PowerPoint presentation here, faster power climb and improved rewards is a big focus, new activities, which includes the Renegades campaign and lawless jobs. They also want to fuel variety with rewards balance and buffs for the portal, on top of reward buffs to fireteam activities, then Year of Prophecy raid and dungeon reward improvements, and a bonus engram rework, which, to be fair, a lot of that stuff they've already done significant bits of that in the current live game. Otherwise, a new weekly ritual and portal variety, so they're introducing these Vanguard orders, weekly bonus engrams, weekly conquest rewards, weekly legacy raids and dungeons, which I believe they said at the time would probably still feature their original rewards, not in the tiering system, although it would be awesome if Bungie could do that. This is the updated seasonal hub they additionally shared with the orders on the left-hand side, and then we've got daily objectives, weekly objectives, the reward track, and things like that. So they're generally going to move some of that stuff around. Hopefully it will be more fun. Then, as we discussed, all exotic weapons and armor will be featured gear. They'll enhance legendary weapon tiers in Shadow and Order as well, or allow us to enhance them, sorry. So they're going to introduce a currency that basically lets us level them up to higher tiers, I think, something like that. Then they're going to sunset the featured gear score bonus, more vault space, and improved sorting and filtering, which is important context because we knew about the vault space thing for a little while. So I'm guessing systematically, improved sorting and filtering is another big quality of life component. They'll also pause non-critical nerfs and balance changes. Part of that may be a reaction to the fact that they've actually walked back many changes that we got in Edge of Fate. So there must be a realization that some things are really a waste of resources unless you have a surplus of resources to actually spend time looking at stuff. They should focus on the really important things. They'll also focus on super and subclass buffs there as well. And so yeah, that's it. I imagine, especially now that we've had the final sort of very big update to Portal things, we're going to have Festival and some other event content. Over the next month, Bungie are going to turn the focus to Renegades quite a bit, I would have thought, especially initially in terms of system changes and things that they will change from the current live game to what we will have in Renegades, and then hopefully more juicy reveals for actual content. Either way, it's an interesting discussion, so give me your thoughts in the comment section, guys. As I've said, I will have a video tomorrow discussing how Bungie prioritise certain things and perhaps some of the mistakes that they've made in the Edge of Fate era specifically. Although, credit where it is due, there have been a lot of changes that Bungie have made in a more kind of short-term capacity, because obviously big things like, hey, just get rid of the portal or totally redesign it, will take a much longer period of time to actually do. I've no doubt they will ultimately do it if they're still supporting the game, you know, come summer 2026, for instance. I'm sure bigger things will happen. The cycle continues, you know, so give us your thoughts. If you enjoyed this bit of conversation, I guess, then a rating really does help us out. And subscribe for more Destiny content. Otherwise, though, thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.